In 1960, four teenage girls from Passaic, New Jersey recorded the first song by a black girl group to ever hit #1 in America. It sold over 1 million copies. It got covered by Carole King herself, by Cher, by Dusty Springfield, by a dozen more, for decades after. And the band that worshipped the Shirelles more than anyone, the Beatles. They built part of their early act on this group's records, but we'll get to them. 60 years later, that song still plays on the radio every single day. And when the women who sang it went looking for the money, the trust fund they'd been promised since they were teenagers, it was empty. Not smaller than expected, not tied up in court. Empty. Zero. This is how the Shirelles got robbed. And the worst part, every girl group that came after them walked into the exact same trap. Right up to a group that sold 14 million records and still filed for bankruptcy. But it starts here. 1960, with a song the lead singer didn't even want to sing. Here's something nobody tells you about the most famous song they ever recorded. Shirley Owens, the lead singer, didn't want to do it. The song was Will You Love Me Tomorrow? It was written by a 20-year-old named Carole King and her husband Gary Goffin. And when Shirley first heard it, she thought it was too country, too pop. Not their sound. She turned it down. It took her producer talking her into it, adding a string arrangement, reframing the whole thing before she'd laid down the vocal. And the vocal she gave is the one you know. That ache. That question every teenager in America was afraid to ask out loud. January 1961. Will You Love Me Tomorrow hits #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. First girl group. #1. First black girl group to do it. Period. Carole King's career launched. She's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Tapestry is one of the best-selling albums of all time. And the woman who almost said no, who actually sang it. Keep that in mind. We're coming back to her. Because the song made history. The question is, who made the money? So how do four high schoolers end up with a #1 record in the first place? A woman named Florence Greenberg. And I want to be fair here because this part isn't simple. Florence Greenberg was a New Jersey housewife who heard these girls, believed in them, and built an entire record label, Scepter Records, essentially around them. In an industry run by men, she was a woman who owned her own label. That's real. But here's what nobody tells you. The girls were minors, teenagers. So the arrangement was that their earnings, the royalties from a million-selling record, would go into a trust fund, held for them, waiting for them when they came of age. That's the promise. That's the deal that lets a parent feel okay about their kid signing to a label. Years go by. The hits keep coming. Mama said, "Baby, it's you, Soldier Boy," another #1. And when the group finally goes to collect what they were owed, the trust fund was empty. The money they'd been told was being held for them, gone. And the contract they'd signed as teenagers was tight enough that getting out and getting paid turned into a legal fight that effectively froze their career at the exact moment they should have been at their peak. Think about that. The label didn't just take the money. The fight to get the money is what stalled the group. That's the trap. And it's about to repeat. Over and over. Now, here's where the story goes global. A young band in Liverpool was obsessed with the Shirelles. Obsessed. They covered Baby It's You. And they covered a Shirelles B-side called Boys. That band was the Beatles. And here's the detail that tells you everything about how much they respected this group. Boys was written from a girl's point of view, about a boy. When Ringo took the lead vocal, the band smoothed over some of the verse lines, the most obvious pronoun moments. But the hook, the chorus, they left it exactly as the Shirelles sang it. While I talk about Boys, Ringo's singing it straight, on the early Beatles records, in front of screaming crowds. They could have rewritten the whole thing. They didn't. They kept the part that mattered, the part that made it a Shirelles song. So let's add it up. The biggest band in human history is covering your songs, keeping your hooks intact. Carole King launched her career on your voice. Your records are #1. The cultural reach. Total. The ownership. 0. That's the gap at the heart of this entire story. Influence and ownership are two completely different things. And the people who get robbed are almost always the ones with all the influence and none of the ownership. And if you think this was a one-time thing, one bad label, one broken promise, let me introduce you to the Marvelettes. Motown, 1961. The Marvelettes record, Please Mr. Postman. It becomes Motown's first #1 pop hit. The first, before the Supremes, before the Temptations, before any of the names you think of when you think Motown. It was 4 teenagers from Inkster, Michigan, who put Berry Gordy's label on the map. And here's the part that haunts me. There was a song written at Motown called Where Did Our Love Go? And here's the receipt. Songwriter Lamont Dozier cut the demo in Gladys Horton's key, the Marvelettes' lead singer. The song was meant for them. They passed. It went to the Supremes. It made the Supremes the biggest girl group in the world. The Marvelettes faded. Gladys Horton spent years fighting for the recognition and the royalty she felt the group was owed. Same trap. The girls make the history. Somebody else keeps the money. Now, jump forward. 1994. A group called TLC releases Crazy Sexy Cool, an album that becomes one of the best-selling records of the decade. They are, at that moment, the biggest girl group in America. And in 1995, at the absolute height of their fame, they file for bankruptcy.
And we are broke as broke can be.
Here's the math, and it's documented. The group had sold around 14 million albums. Their royalty rate, 7%. After the label took its cut, after expenses, after the producers and management and the recoupable costs, the group was paid, total, about $1.2 million. Split 3 ways. After taxes, after everything, in July of 1995, at the peak, they filed Chapter 11. Same math, same machine. 34 years after 4 teenagers in New Jersey watched their trust fund come up empty. The biggest girl group in the country is standing in a bankruptcy court. The faces changed. The decade changed. The contract just put on new clothes. The Shirelles weren't a tragedy. They were the warning label nobody read. So that's the trap. 60 years of it. From the Shirelles to TLC, the same story on repeat. You make the music, you make the history. Somebody else makes the money, which leaves one question. Did anybody beat it? And the answer, the name that keeps coming up, is Prince. Prince didn't just complain about owning his masters. He wrote slave on his face, changed his name to a symbol, and built his own labels Paisley Park, then NPG specifically, so he'd own what the Shirelles never got to own. He built the exit the Shirelles never had. But that's a whole other story. And honestly, my community wrote half of it in the comments already. So that's where we're going next. The artists who actually fought the machine and won. Prince, Joan Jett, Chance the Rapper, The Masters War. Here's my question for you. Of every artist who tried to beat the system, who actually stayed free? And who do you think should have, but didn't? Drop it below. Who actually stayed free?